Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being with us today. Again, my name is Peter Jives, the founder and director of A Faith That Does Justice. And it's really a pleasure for us to be able to try and make contact with as many people who are following A Faith That Does Justice weekly or biweekly as best we can, to try and maintain contact and to try and talk about some of the issues that affect us and what it means to people of faith. So today, I really want to just spend a moment talking about immigrants in a time of this COVID-19 virus pandemic. And really, at a general level, this really reflects upon people of color. Let me speak first about the general. And I want to talk on two levels. One is really the what. What are we talking about, and really, why should it matter to us? The what is really simply stated, and I think it's so obvious. For me, personally speaking, during this time of the COVID-19 stay-at-home measures, reading or looking on the internet each day and seeing the news, the death toll. I saw yesterday that 2 months ago, the number of deaths in this country was about 84. To 2 months later, yesterday, it was 82,000, just about. Dramatic number of deaths, and there's a disproportionate number of people of color, people recently arriving in this country who are being affected and dying much more regularly than perhaps myself or others who would be in a similar situation. We have the advantage, many of us, of being able to work from home. I'm doing that here today. We also are able to continue what we're doing and are in more secure situations, perhaps financially. People of color, recently arrived people, are people who it's not as easy for them to work from home. They don't have those types of jobs. Many people who are people of color or recently arrived are working in service industries. They may be truckers moving food around the country. They may be in the supermarkets, stocking shelves or at cash registers. These people are exposed to the COVID-19 much, much more highly than we are. And as a result, it shouldn't be surprising that they're going to be affected more frequently. Other factors, obviously, are that many of these people have comorbid conditions, meaning that they are being poor. They have health conditions like diabetes and asthma at a higher rate than most of us might have. So when we talk, though, about the recently arrived immigrants, what is troubling to me is that they seem to be targeted. They're being left out of the country, or visas are being cut. They're being told that we do not want you in here now. And it seems to be using the COVID-19 virus as a way of decreasing the entry of people into this country. It's totally contrary to who this country has been for 200 years. We are people who have opened our borders to allow people to come in. There are also economic people, of which I am not one, but they would say, too, that the idea that we want to save jobs for American citizens when the recovery comes about in this country, the economic recovery, that it's false, that the recovery of this magnitude is going to need inexpensive labor, which traditionally has been held by immigrant populations, so that these people are actually needed. So for me, sitting at home watching all this unfold, I find it very troubling that people of color, people recently arrived, immigrant populations are being targeted. And that gets me to the why. Why should it matter to us? People of faith, be us Jewish, Christian, Muslim. I'd like to invoke the prophets, the great Jewish prophets. There's a writer, a theologian, a Jewish theologian, Abraham Heschel, who in the 1960s, really wrote a remarkable book on the Jewish prophets. And his contribution was not so much explaining what they were saying, but how they were saying it. The prophetic voice, the Jewish prophetic voice, does not really predict the future. What it talks about is the present, and it speaks truth in the present to a society that generally does not want to hear God's truth. The prophets are reluctant people in the Jewish history to speak God's voice to people who do not want to hear, and really suffer the consequences for doing that. We know Jeremiah, for example, really people were trying to kill Jeremiah. And he would ask God, why is it? Why are you asking me to do this when this is what's the result? So Jeremiah continued, and I think what we hear from the prophetic voice and what Abraham Heschel talked about was that the prophets not only spoke God's truth, they spoke with the emotion of their own personality. And Heschel talked about there were three levels which the prophets would speak in God's name. And the first was really pathos. There was a tremendous sorrow that God would say to the Jewish people through the voice of these prophets, how can this be? How can you treat people with the callousness that you are, given what I have done for you? I have taken you from Egypt. I have brought you to a land where you can prosper. I have taught you to be a light to the nations. And look how you turn out and turn around and treat people in need. And from God's great sorrow and hurt came anger. And not just anger, but almost rage. God saying to the Jewish people, you will suffer for this. What you're doing is unfair, and I will take my ire upon you for doing this. So sorrow, and from sorrow comes God's rage that people would be treated this way after God had treated the Jewish people with the kindness, with the compassion, with the love that God did. But finally, what we would hear from the Jewish prophets after the sorrow and the rage was always forgiveness. God's anger lasts but a moment, and God's love lasts forever. And I think that's the lesson for us to keep in mind today, that we are really asked to step back, to be compassionate people, to look at people who are suffering. And reminds me of a story. I got a phone call 2 days ago from a woman who talked about, she had a Latino group, women, coming into her house once a week or once every 2 weeks to clean. And now that can't be done. But she said that none of them really spoke English, and she suspected it was likely that some or all of them were undocumented. And she made a decision. She said, the only thing I can do is really to reach out to these people and recognize that they may be hurting, that they don't have access to income. Illegal people in this country don't have access to unemployment. They don't have access to these stimulus checks. They have been cut off financially. This person who called me told me that they were going to pay the going rate that they were paying in the house for these people to clean as a way to keep them going. Now, this woman financially was able to do that. We're not all able to do that. But I think what it really asks us is to step back and say, let's leave no one behind. Let's do what we can to help each other. And for myself, as a director of a faith that does justice, as we emerge from this stay-at-home, stay-in-place measures that we're in right now, I'd really like to invite people to walk with us and to talk about what can we do? Can we learn something from this experience where the disparities of the haves and the have-nots, the way some people are being treated that are totally antithetical to a person of belief, be it Jew, be it Christian, be it Muslim. We are called to be better people than what we are seeing going on in some aspects of this country right now. And I think we need to stand with a voice to be able to do that. So with that, I'm going to stop. That was my point for the day, and hopefully we can continue to have these points. We certainly invite your feedback to call in to see if you might be able to offer any input to us. And as we do come out of this, we would really appreciate your input and to walk with us in this. I do not have access to any questions that have come in. So again, I will end this here and really ask all of you to know that you are in our thoughts and prayers, and that we ask yours as we come out of this. We ask for a safe return. We ask for God's wisdom upon some of the scientists who are behind the modeling that's being done, working out the ways we can emerge from this stay-at-home policy into a society that can recover economically. And may we as people of faith say, let's do this in a way that leaves no one behind and that really acts with a prophetic voice, that God does want all people to be able to participate in a fair share of the goods of God's creation. So with that, I will leave you and look forward to speaking with you again. God bless you. You are in our thoughts and prayers, and we ask you to please keep us in yours. Thank you so much.